Peace, everyone. I hope you're doing well. This video is on depression and the secret cure that is basically somehow occulted in society. Not too much people talk about when it comes to anxiety, depression, sadness, suicidal thoughts, all that black rabbit hole that an individual might go into when it comes to facing challenges in one's own perspective and the external world as well. I wanted to talk about this topic for a couple of reasons because it resonates with me and it was something that I solved, and I think it's really valuable if you understood it from a very simple perspective instead of going into the loopholes of okay, what practices we can do, all these things. So this is more of a perspective change instead of a technique thing that you might find that okay, you have to do this or else. So you will be able to make your own techniques and make things work for you. But what's different here is that we're going to talk about what is depression and how it manifests, and what is anxiety and all these things. So basically, God, the creator, nature, had created us humans with a very complex tool or technology, basically, which is the brain and the mind. The human mind is a very superior force on earth, and nothing else is more superior than the mind, except of course the universe and the power of God, the nature, and so forth. So in face of all the organisms on earth, we have the human mind, which is very complex, and also the brain. Like, the human brain is the most complex technology on earth. If you look at the science behind that and how the neural connections are forming, you are basically holding the most complex technology in your body. So it's okay for us to be, let's say, unable to handle it properly. I would say most of us are not handling it properly because there's no manual, right? Like, we don't basically teach these things of how we should be present in the moment, how we should use the brain instead of making the mind use it, right? So this is a very good perspective to take into consideration, because we are basically handling a very technological tool, and this tool is very unsafe if we mess around with it, and it can be unsafe for kids, for teens, for adults, and even the elderly, of course. So the mind in by itself is a very detail oriented, and even at a certain point it goes beyond our perspective. So looking at that and giving it the value that it holds puts us in a more awareness standpoint, so we will be able to track with the mind more often. And okay, I have this huge technology in my body and I have to handle it more properly. So I thought this perspective helped me a lot, and I feel that this is one of the things that should be more embraced in society, so we are able to track with the mind and observe it and make sure that it's not something that is using us. So after we talked about the mind, that it's a very complex entity, and the brain as well being very complex in its neural connections, which is basically always changing, right? The brain is a complex organ that always change. It's not like we have a brain and that's how it is for forever. The concept here is the brain connects to each other according to certain perspectives, right? So if we have certain beliefs, if we have certain philosophies, all that will be implanted in our brain. That's why, like, when we challenge these beliefs, we find it hard to accept. But when we work on it, just as this perspective of, okay, I have this realization that I am the body and the mind, and this mind is a very superior force on earth. So it makes us consider it way more. So these perspective changes create a new neural complexity in the brain that challenges all the other beliefs. Okay, so in that way we are using the brain for our advantage. So we're using the mind by shifting the perspective of how we see things to change our reality. We're not forcing change by doing meditation practices or going to, let's say, a conference or something like that, because our happiness is not found externally, it's found internally. And it's just a matter of shifting certain belief systems, certain perspectives, and we're able to manifest this happiness. What I saw about happiness is that it takes many forms. So unhappiness is the general umbrella term, but it can be sadness, it can be regret, it can be worthlessness. It can take basically many forms, but it all goes back to us being unhappy, and the way that we be happy is by questioning it. Like, why are we feeling this way? Okay, by doing this for ourselves. And what we see is that there is no reason not to be happy. You might have to do your own journaling around the things that you think are worthy to make you unhappy. But the more that you journal about it, the more that you see that, okay, you have the capacity to do the change. Like, there's always chance out there that you can shift your life. So all this mind energy, if it's based on false beliefs, right? Beliefs that, okay, we have to put our energy externally so we can get happy, right? And all that energy that the mind is thinking about will reach a point where there's an end road, right? Because it's basically a false belief. It's not working in nature. Like, we're not receiving that internal happiness, and we're always depending on the external world for that. So all that misbeliefs or disbeliefs or false beliefs will create a lot of trapped energy in the mind. So the mind will always be overthinking. We're going through our days and overthinking about so many things, and that can create a lot of false beliefs. It can create negative self-image about ourselves. If we're basically always thinking that the solution is out there, happiness is out there, happiness is after we get certain thing or etc., we're creating a subconscious disbelief in ourselves, because we're always looking back to the external instead of the internal. And to look at the internal, all that we have to do is, it's a hard work, but it takes discipline to shift that perspective of how we see things. And the more that we talk about it, the more that you listen to it, the more that you journal on it, right? The more that you're able to shift that perspective. This is the cure for depression, because if we look at how energy manifests. It's basically giving energy, creating energy and giving energy. If we're always depending on taking energy from the external world, we will be lacking because we're not basically happy and we're not generating our own energy. We're always depending on external factors to give us this energy. This is depression. When we think that we should be happy, but we're not happy. When we feel that we deserve something, but we're seeing that we're not deserving it. When an observer, which is the mind, sees that and goes through it, oh, I should be happy, but I'm not happy. Oh, okay, that is depression. That should and I'm not creates depression. As for anxiety, it's more of a, I have to prove myself. I have to be happy. I have to change things, right? So it manifests in many ways. One of the ways is going to our internal world, which people call introverts. And it can manifest in kids as well, in autism, for example. And if we go to the external world, it can also create a lot of bad habits where teenagers, for example, are doing a lot of things to fit in. And that also happens with adults, basically, and even children. But in children, they're more sensitive, so when they fail, they go back into their cocoon, or they manifest different behavior that helps them survive in complex changing dynamics. But our point here is, the more that we depend on external energy, the more that we will feel this lack. But the more that we create it and make it manifest, the more that we solve that equation. It's basically all about energy transfer. We have this organism, the organ, the brain. It's always working. You feel that these neurotransmitters are electrical pulses, always delivering informations. And if that energy is not manifesting, we're not creating certain energy, we're not running our vehicle using that complex neural connections, then our entity or our body, mind, and soul will not be turned on. We'll always be depending on the matrix, which supposedly be the one that will give us the survival, the energy, the thing that we need. But once we turn that internal factor, we become dependent on the mind, the body, and the soul, and create a vision where we are transferring this energy. So we're manifesting this energy, we're creating this energy, and we're giving it back. So now we're shifting the dynamic. Instead of always taking energy or depending on the external world, now we are giving energy and we're somehow helping the external world. This is a very huge realization, and if more of us look at it from that perspective, the more that we will be depending on serving others. Service to others is a very beautiful term. I'm not sure what happened in history where we stopped looking at it. I would think it's the educational system that swayed people's perspective from serving others in the right way, and they put a law that this is how you should do it. But service to others is this creative energy where what we see, how we can serve, and our driving force that is within us to help others. That is the cure for depression. It's basically the cure for any mental health issue, because, as we said, it all goes back to unhappiness. It all goes back to this system of energy exchange. So, service to others is the cure to depression and anxiety and any mental health challenge. And if we think about it from a physical, metaphysical, mental, energetic aspect, we see that it's the mind always curious to manifest logic, to manifest rational behaviors or ideologies. So whenever we are thinking, whenever we are going throughout our day-to-day life, we are working on service to others. And when that happens, we bring to ourselves a lot of relief, because now this energy is being transferred. We're using this energy, so it's not always trapped in our mind. We're manifesting our thought, we're manifesting our creativity. And from other perspective, we are also allowing ourselves to have more stability. So it's not more trapped energy, now we're easily flowing, right? We are seeing that, okay, there's an opportunity to be safe, to be in our physical body in a way that is neutral, that is, okay, I have a purpose, which is I have to deal with my entity, which is the mind, the body, the soul. I have a vision, which is service to others, and I'm manifesting my reality. This creates the most impactful shift, and it's the cure for depression and anxiety. As for other things that depends on external factors, we mean things like drugs, things like external world, like humans even, things that we buy, all that stuff. It creates a dependency on an external force that will always mask our symptoms. And that masking is very dangerous because it will damage the mind, it will damage the soul, it will damage the mind, the brain, and basically we will fall into many bad habits, bad energies that we will not be able to face. When we see that we have an energy, we have a huge potential, even if maybe physically we don't feel energetic, even if you feel fatigue or you feel tired, that is just the body. But your mind, I'm sure there's so much energy in the mind. And to help the mind manifest itself and unlock its basically flower of life, where we basically give this essence to others and manifest our creative energy, we will be in a more state of flow, in and flow, and that gives a very sustainable energy for the body. Now we're not waking up for a cup of coffee to get us rolling, because the mind is already in that state where we already know what we have to do. We're not being forced by a job, we're not being forced by a degree. We are making sense of reality through our own mind. And this is why we have to mind our own power. The mind is the most critical and most beautiful, most delicate and most technological thing on earth. There's never been anything more technologically available for us humans, and the most technologically advanced thing is in us. So all these perspectives, the more that we look at them, the more that we know that we have to mind our own power.